Coming up on MBL Tonight, we get the owner and GM of the San Francisco 49ers, Decadog, to come on. He's going to discuss the draft and things going on around the team. Next up, we'll have Gub, MBL insider and draft expert. Come on, tell us about who are the winners and losers from this last MBL offseason. And finally, we will wrap it up with the MBL Tonight way too early playoff predictions. So stay there, take a seat, hang out with us for a while because MBL Tonight is coming right at you. Welcome everybody to MBL Tonight. I'm your host, as always, Sonny Weaver. We got a big show for you tonight, so let's go ahead and get started. First up tonight, we've got the GM and owner of the San Francisco 49ers, Decadog. Decadog, I thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us here tonight. So let's go ahead and get started with the interview. Now, Deca, what I have found interesting, you guys had 5 first-round picks in this last draft. You obviously didn't get all of those picks from just a single draft. You compiled them over a couple years. Go through your thoughts on how, that plan came together for you guys.
Well, when I took over this team early on, as you know, there was a couple of really solid players on the offensive side of the ball in Woodard and Finley. I guess my mindset going in was this team needed to be rebuilt from the ground up. With that thought process, I was comfortable dropping down a few picks in an effort to acquire some more, and it panned out.
Now, Deca, with those 5 first-round picks, you went defense early and often. Tell us how the early returns on that have gone for you.
Up to this point, not as well as I'd hoped, but in every game, the guys seem to be gelling better and better. We had a fairly solid performance last night against the Rams. Again, a disappointing finish, but it appears to me anyway that every week they're coming together a little bit more.
Now, with that said, offense has been a little bit of a struggle for you guys this year. What do you believe the issue is for you guys out in San Francisco?
Well, first and foremost is the inability to establish the run. We just haven't been able to get any run game going whatsoever.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the rushing, averaging just over 1 yard per carry. What needs to change there for you guys to get that running game up and going?
Well, a couple of things really. One of them is the offensive line, first and foremost. It's not shown. Now, you got to bear in mind, too, our opponents up to this point are all undefeated. Granted, one of them was 2 games against us, but they're still very solid defensive lines and linebacking cores. I do still hold out hope that we can establish a run game going forward.
Now, Jawara Woodard has thrown a lot of interceptions throughout his career in San Francisco. You guys bring in Kirk Cousins last year. He's already come in once this year for Woodard in a game. Now, Woodard's contract runs out at the end of this season. Do you guys plan on re-signing Jawara Woodard?
Yes, we do. I still believe in Woodard. More often than not, it's bad reads, but I still think he's got it in him.
Where do the negotiations stand with him right now?
We're going to initiate that later on down the season. Hopefully, he gets a couple of wins under his belt and reestablishes some confidence. And being a contract year, I expect him to show up.
0-16 last year, 0-3 start this year. What needs to change right there, and what needs to happen in San Francisco to get this team going in the right direction?
The leaders in the locker room, granted, I imagine we are probably the youngest team in the NBL, but the leaders in the locker room, they're not showing any signs of giving up. They're trying to get these guys fired up, trying to pull them together, and it appears to me it's working. Slower than I'd like to see, but it is coming together.
Well, we thank you for joining us, Decadog. We appreciate your time. We'll see you soon. So next up on the show, we're going to bring in MBL Live insider and draft expert Gub to come in and talk about his winners and losers of the offseason this year. Now, Gub, off-season winners, you don't always become the best just by winning the off-season, but there were some guys that really stood out. So what team stood out as having the best off-season this year?
I thought a lot of teams actually did fairly well this offseason, but my biggest winners got to be the Philadelphia Eagles. They killed it in free agency, bringing in Dante Hightower, Earl Thomas, Rob Quinn, Cam Jordan. On the offensive side of the ball, Taylor Decker. They lost Zach Ertz, but they were able to replace him with the first-round draft pick and Andre Whitner and a tight end. I thought they did an absolute great job this offseason. They also grabbed a safety, I believe in the 7th round, Torrey Nevlet, who's a quick def, so I thought that was a real nice pick for them.
Obviously, the Eagles did have a really good year, but you've got some other guys up there on your board. Who else stood out as having a winning offseason?
49ers set themselves up great this for the draft. Absolutely killed it. Free agency, they didn't do much. I mean, they brought in Kirk Cousins, who I think is a solid backup to Woodard. He might get some time. Carlo Dyson, their first-round pick, was great. They grabbed LaMarcus Mallet, and 2 defensive tackles, I believe, in the first round. Which will help them going to a little 4-3 action. They grabbed both star corners in this draft with Anton Veltong and Suando Clark. Were both star devs and the only star devs for corners, and they got them both. So I thought they did a very good job this offseason. The Seattle Seahawks, which is my surprise for a winner. When you look at them, they lost Richard Sherman, Russell Wilson, Earl Thomas, and you wouldn't think, that they could. How can you be a winner after that? But they did a great job of revamping that team. They brought in Cam Newton, Marcus Pouncey, the top tight end Hunter Henry, Stephon Gilmore, who will replace Sherman. So I thought they did a very, very nice job after all those losses. They brought in some good pieces to stay afloat in that NFC West. Then you look at the Arizona Cardinals, who absolutely had a great free agency with topped by Julio Jones and Richard Sherman. Anytime you can bring in a guy like Julio, he still got it. He'll still get the job done. Sherman will go on the opposite side of Peterson with Tyrann Mathieu. So that's one of the more scarier secondaries in recent memory that I can remember. They had a good draft. Tracy Smallwood, outside linebacker, was their number 1 pick, and their only losses, like I said, were Golden Tate and Michael Floyd, which Julio can replace them real easy. My last top 5, it was tough. I'm going to go with the New England Patriots. They had 2 picks in the top 5. I believe they got their franchise quarterback and Zot. Cortez Boger, who was my top wide receiver on my mock draft. They brought him in, and they got the top left tackle in Parker Nolan, who I thought was a nice pick for them to help shore up that offensive line. They brought in Kendall Fuller and Eric Berry to help shore up their secondary to go with Malcolm Butler. And they brought in Mitchell Schwartz and Graham Glasgow to help with Parker Nolan to shore up that offensive line.
All right, now those are your winners. Now on the flip side of that, Gub, who are your losers? Let's start with who's the biggest loser.
You got to look at the New Orleans Saints. They lost both defensive ends, Sheldon Rankins and Cameron Jordan. They lost strong safety, Kenny Vaccaro, and tight end Kobe Fleener, and they didn't have any picks really to help replace these guys. They don't have much cap to really be active in free agency, so they kind of handcuffed themselves and weren't able to replace those guys with anybody that's decent enough to play. So that's why they were my biggest loser. They just couldn't replace anybody that they lost.
Now the Saints definitely did struggle, but you got some other guys up there on your board. So go ahead and tell us why those teams ended up on your loser side of the column.
The Jacksonville Jags, they were in kind of a hard situation. But when you lose Jalen Ramsey, arguably the best corner in the draft or in free agency, and then you lose Myles Jack, their top 2 defenders, and they couldn't really replace them. They went out and got free safety Marco Childress, which it was an okay pick in the first round. I mean, he's a superstar. He's got a lot of potential, but I thought there was other needs there for them to address, but that's why they're there. The Minnesota Vikings, They lost Harrison Smith, Kyle Rudolph, Linval Joseph, which Linval Joseph and Harrison Smith, in my opinion, are their top two defenders. Kyle Rudolph is a big loss. I believe he went to Cincinnati, so that was a good pickup for them. And their signings was really, the big signings was kind of just Terrence Williams, which, I think he's past, his prime, and wasn't necessarily a big need, but, that's what they went out and did. My other one was Tampa Bay Bucks. They didn't lose much. Doug Martin was probably one of their bigger ones. But in the draft, their draft wasn't very good. Out of their 7 picks, I believe they targeted 5 defensive linemen, led by Stephen Warfield. They missed a lot in the draft. They weren't able to do much in free agency. So that's why they're on there. And then you look at the Oakland Raiders. The Oakland Raiders were not very active in free agency. They had an okay draft. Alien Kroom was their number 1 pick. But after that, their draft wasn't very good. They lost Latavius Murray. They lost Malcolm Smith. They still got some good players, but not being active in free agency is the main reason of why they're on the top 5 losers.
Well, that's interesting, Gub. We're going to have to watch and see how that goes throughout the year. We thank you for coming on, and we will see you soon. Now, let's go ahead and roll right into the MBL Live way too early playoff predictions. Obviously, it's only week 3, so there's a lot of football left to be played. But these are who we believe are going to be the finals at the end of the year. So let's go ahead and pull up the AFC chart, and we'll take a look. In the AFC, we'll start out with the wild cards. At number 6, I've got the Chargers. The Chargers have quietly built a really nice team out there in San Diego. Now it's time for them to be rewarded with a wild card slot, and I've got them at number 6, just sneaking into the playoffs. Number 5, I've got the Titans. The reigning AFC champion gets back to the playoffs as a dangerous wild card. That's not going to be a 5 seed that any team is going to want to see. At number 4, I've got a newcomer to the playoffs, the Miami Dolphins. Now, the Miami Dolphins find themselves with the division title after what I believe will be a hard-fought battle with the Buffalo Bills. The Miami Dolphins come out on top, and they go from one of the worst teams in MBL to a playoff team. Number 3, I got the Oakland Raiders off to a good start this year. I think this is the year the Oakland Raiders finally put together. They don't wait to midseason to have a good run. They get it going now, and they're going to carry that all the way into the playoffs. At number 2, I got the Houston Texans. A dominant D will once again carry this team to a division title in the number 2 seed. Look for the Texans to be a hard out when the playoffs hit. At number 1, I've got the Pittsburgh Steelers led by Dak Prescott. Look for the Steelers to once again make it to the AFC Championship game. This offense is explosive. Right now they're missing some guys, but once they all return, not going to be many teams in the AFC that can slow them down. And that's our playoff predictions for the AFC. Now we're going to flip it over and go to the NFC and see what they've got to offer. Starting us off at number 6, the New York Giants. After just missing out last year on the playoffs, the Giants and their dangerous running attack look to be a tough out here at the number 6 seed. Dallas Cowboys ring in at the number 5 seed. The defending Super Bowl champs end up with the wild card, and this definitely is going to be a team that no one's going to want to face in the playoffs. Number 4 is going to be the LA Rams. Russell Wilson's getting those Rams off to a hot start. Look for the Rams defense to really help down the stretch. Russell Wilson, Todd Gurley, and the always dangerous Tavon Austin look to make some noise in the NFC playoffs. Number 3, Falcons. Blake Bortles and company win the South for the first time in 3 years to attempt a playoff run. They're a dangerous team if Bortles can keep it together, and we feel like they've got a shot to make a run. Number 2 is going to be the Detroit Lions. Lions drop one early to the Cowboys this year, but they're always dangerous. Matthew Stafford will look to rebound from that loss and avenge his loss last year to the Washington Redskins and take the Lions back to the Super Bowl. And number 1 is the Washington Redskins. After a tough loss in the NFC Championship game to the Dallas Cowboys last year, Redskins with home field advantage will be a very dangerous team to watch here in the playoffs. They have a recent victory over the Dallas Cowboys. Look for them to be dangerous. And that's our NFC playoff predictions. And remember, as I said, there's tons of playoff football left to be determined here. It's early in the season, 3 weeks in. A lot of those teams could move up, could move down, but that's our way too early playoff prediction. That's all the time we have here for MBL Tonight this week. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Make sure you follow along on the MBL Network. Lots of great content over there. As always, I've been Sonny Weaver. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.